straight for everyone. So folks, I go through this really quick because I know you probably have questions, and someone will handle that, fielding any questions you might have. But thank you so much for having me here today, and I'll take any questions you may feel.
We'll start over here.
So this has been in the news lately, the pursual of jobs during AI, with AI out there, how difficult it is to find a job, because everything is so different. You have to be really savvy to know how to get your resume out there. What is Georgia doing in the field of AI versus jobs in the blue collar sector?
She hasn't taken any orders. I started. I'm not where I started.
How difficult is it going to be for the young people to pursue their jobs during this time when it's difficult to even get your name out there online?
Well, actually, the people that are going to do the best with AI are actually people that have traditional manufacturing type jobs. You cannot replace an electrician.
Right.
It actually takes someone to physically do that. They haven't found a robot. I used to work as an iron worker every summer from 16 all the way through college. You're not going to replace someone to do a robot to do that. It just takes someone to do all the intricacies of how it works. So they're actually going to be positioned very well. It's actually a lot of our white collar workers. Are people concerned about that? But what they're really seeing, like for example, accountants, they move from just kind of following the ledger now to more of a consulting on the accounting side. Because whenever you really need to know what should I do here to help reduce my taxes, how do I grow my company, how do I cash flow, all those type of things, there's going to be a huge push towards becoming a consultant in the accounting field. Because we'll never be experts in accounting unless we have our CPA license or we check that. And so I think it's a little bit of this that you're going to see a transition. What I do think is going to be a big push for is job retraining, and that's really becoming a lifelong learner. It's been a while. When I graduated from the university, one of my professors, in 10 years, you're going to either have 10 years of experience, or you're going to have 1 year experience 10 times over. He says you're going to do a whole lot better in your career if you become a lifelong learner, and every year you'll practice something new, so you never really get stale in the industry. So that's where we can come alongside folks with our pure technical colleges, job retraining, things like that. Because we're going to need people when some Belgian company comes into Georgia, or someone who puts some billboards up on I-65 is going into Chicago. We encourage a businessman to come down to Georgia because it's a great place to open up shop, and we're going to see more of that. People coming to good states, red states, and fleeing blue states to set up shop here. So either way, we're going to grow business. We need to make sure we have skilled people for those places, and we're going to have job retraining.
Are you going to see more recruiters out there or conferences, or they're doing it more manually?
I don't know about that. I think the market will respond to that. I know that we are very active, always out there looking. We did use good recruiters to find folks, but we're always out there for Indeed and other ways of just, we're looking for resumes, we're looking for talent. At the end of the day, that's why the construction industry, when I talk about the plumbers, electricians, and all that, when I was in Columbus, Georgia, they were in the mill. We were having a chamber meeting over here, but over there was actually the construction trades, picking up about 10 different counties. And that table would say me that, and it wasn't a table, it was really a kind of an area. That would be the plumbers, electricians, cement masons, bricklayers, wood framers, framing a house, and then the welders. And there's a competition of all the different high schools. So you could be, 7 different high schools, and then they picked out the best one. And what the superintendents were doing, they were all people, 3-day-old beard, 45 plus, that had done this for years upon years, and looking at the talent, and every one of them was getting a job offer for summer employment. Because when they graduated from high school, they wanted a pipeline of talent. So I think you're going to see industry get involved in this too, because they need folks too. And that's a great thing when industry comes alongside, because that means that a big government program is really a free market saying, hey, we need to be involved to protect our interest in our industry. So you'll see companies like RW Allen that are out there looking at that, being involved in that in this region also.
How do you feel about China buying land in the state?
Oh, I don't support that because they're really a long-term adversary, and also they're not a democracy. They don't really exist by the rule of law. I think it was actually a mistake to carry over to the WTO. Because the WTO really belongs to companies that have the rule of law, have a constitution. When you have one man rule, one election, I just don't think they believe the WTO. Then you look at what happened with the deindustrialization of America. Because what they do is they support something, throwing it all and supporting government money until they run everyone else in the rest of the world out. It's not just America. Look at Europe, they're starting to see some problems also. But I think that we need to make sure that it's really American, or maybe other friendly folks that share our values.
So what do you do with the land that they've already bought up? How do you take that back?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Georgia's not really been the problem as much as other states. But it's something that the General Assembly's taking a look at, support legislation, to make sure we put guardrails on that.
In this area, we have a lot of data centers coming into the area. And I've heard that it takes a lot of water to cool these systems. And I want to know what kind of studies are being done as to the effect on our water table and what we plan to do to preserve our water.
Good question, but since we're gonna talk about data centers, let's talk the whole thing. Number one, it should be a local issue. Since you specifically mentioned with water, right now, Lakely, Georgia is looking at a data center down there, and that's Early County, which is wherever, I'm turning around in directions, but it's the far southwest corner, it's touching Alabama, but almost on the Florida border. And they really support it strongly. They just lost a Georgia Pacific paper mill. Every job in that plant was 100,000 plus. When they lost those jobs, they said, how do we replace that? What do? We lost 500 jobs, so they're looking at a data center. They support it. But the folks that are doing that data center said also, we're gonna recirculate all the water, and they said we will use less water than just a few hundred homes. So the technology is out there, so I think that's something we need to look at and make sure that that's part of a zoning or rezoning issue, so you're not using water. But I think the big concern people have is power. Will we have power? And with that, what I'm concerned about, and you should be concerned too, that right now everyone says this is a great idea. What happens when maybe the technology changes and they don't need all that power, but meanwhile we have built a power plant just specifically that 50% is used there? Who pays for that cost? Likewise, if you needed additional water, who pays for that water? And all of a sudden, that should be borne on them. So I don't think we should have any free riding, that they should be paying the full load so taxpayers don't pay something to do. But they have worked on some of the water issues on the newer ones. The first ones that they had, they were running it through, running it out, and it's going in hot. And so it's good to see that they're using retention ponds and recirculation now, because they've been pushed by good folks like you.
I know we touched on education, and again, I think we have a few educators in this room. In some of these school districts, I know good education requires good quality teachers. What will you, or how can you ensure that in these school districts we can get competitive salaries for these teachers, and even substitutes like myself, because that pay scheme hasn't changed?
Well, I think there's two professions where the salaries need to go up. I think teaching, Governor Kemp's done a great job of getting those up to another level. But also, I believe in universal school choice. And in my business, we also rewarded folks when they did a great job. And I think when you look at where are my students in August or let's say early September when we test them, and then I look at your progression upwards, I think there should be bonuses there for them so that they have an incentive. I have a sister. I have other family members that, have been in the education space, and so I know that they're dedicated. And the teachers haven't been the problem. Really what it's been is the curriculum. And that was pushed down by a whole bunch of people at some, really fancy university. They did some research project, but they never really checked out what the end result would be. So I think salaries need to go up. And the other one is law enforcement. Because if you look at going back to Keisha Lance Bob's, what she did, she started really one of the big pushers of the defund the police movement, and police salaries need to go up. We're having people sometimes, like in Florida, they're poaching our deputy sheriffs. We need to make sure that the state has a program to help the local city, counties, and also some state resources, so there's retention bonuses, training bonuses, and also recruitment bonuses, so we have people understanding that this is a noble profession, and so is teaching. That's our next generation, and police, law enforcement, they're keeping our community safe. So I support both ideas.
And just to follow up on that, of course, if we get good teachers in there, then we also need protection. I mean, there are, and I'm speaking for Richmond County, maybe Columbia County. Last, I think that we heard was, somebody from the custodial staff was attacked by these students. How are we going to turn these schools into, you know, protect them, but not also feel like they're prisons as well?
That's why
Yeah.
I wanted to double from $50,000 to $100,000, so you can have additional school resource officers. SROs do make a difference. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, certainly.
And after Mr. Secretary, with the conflict involving Iran, which is also termed a war, should people be worried about elections being postponed or delayed?
No, I think that we've shown that, you know, war, famine, whatever happens in America, we've always had our elections. You know, and that's something that we pride ourselves on. In fact, this year, we're celebrating 250 years. We're the longest, you know, constitutional republic that we've ever had in the world. And we just really should be grateful for that. I am. That's why we started off with Star Spangled Banner. Also, you know, obviously with prayer and the pledge.
So if there was a postponed or delay to the election, how would you handle the situation as a government?
I don't believe that we would have that, just because no matter what, we would still be able to vote. You know, really, we'll figure it out, we always do, but, you know, people, you know, we have right now, it's very accessible. I just don't see any chance that that would ever happen. You think we went through a whole lot worse, Depression, World War II, all the calamities that we faced from time to time. You think about even, you know, coming out of Hurricane Helene, what, you know, local election officials did here in Georgia. Look what they did up in North Carolina, and some of those areas were all washed out. And people, they still found a way to get people to vote. People still wanted to vote, and they came out to vote in spite of all the obstacles. So I just have great faith in our election officials, and I have great faith in you, that no matter how bad it was, how many pine trees that come down your street, you know, based on a hurricane, you would find how to get over that thing and get there one way or the other. But one of these good men folk here, maybe lady folk, would get their chainsaw and they start cutting the paths and they get back to the local polling location.
Dave?
Oh, Dave.
Hi,
Dave.
thanks, Brad, I appreciate you being here. I know that you support a lot of the initiatives that Governor Kemp has installed, especially human trafficking and the education areas. There's one area that, is disturbing to me, and that has to do with the mental health. And I know there is, a facility that they are working on to help that, but it's not going to take care of the initial problem. And what I'm talking about is when the sheriff gets called to Sherry's house to pick up a family member that is either strung out on drugs or having a mental breakdown, the sheriff picks them up, takes them to the hospital, they go to, if the hospital is fortunate enough to have a mental health unit, those people deal with them. They give them medication or do whatever they need to do. They don't keep them, in most cases, more than 48 hours. Sheriff is then called to come back and pick up that person, or a family member calls to come back and pick them up. Okay, they pick them up, they pick them back, the family says, we can't deal with them. So they can't put them in jail. So they're turning them on the street. And this is part of the issue that we have with people living on the street and, some of the, arrests that have to be made because they're stealing or they're attacking people because of mental illness. And a lot of this, not only with the younger people who are on drugs, it's not just a drug issue. It's people who, even elderly people, who the family says, I can't handle this 70-year-old, woman because she's got mental illness or she's got dementia. And they get the sheriff involved, the hospital gets involved, they go to the street. There's a real need here. Years ago, the families took care of mental illness if it was in your family. This is back in the 20s and 30s. Then you had homes that you could put these people in where they were taken care of. And the do-gooders decided that these homes were abusive and they needed to get rid of them, so all those were done away with. What, do you have any suggestions or any idea of what we can do to alleviate this problem?
Well, Jane, really what you said is true. When I travel around the state, I talk to a lot of sheriffs. And one sheriff in South Georgia, he said to me, Brad, 20% of the people in our jail are really just mentally unstable. And we're not equipped for it. And then when I was up in Northwest Georgia, one of the sheriffs there said, Brad, we have all these people that are coming in, and you know, what I have actually done, I've taken out of my budget, which I really didn't have the money for, but bringing in a mental health counselor to kind of work with these people so we can assess them, because we're not equipped for it. And I think that what you're seeing this session, and it's probably early in this process, but it's something I know we're gonna have to work on, is that we're gonna have to reinvest again, and we really have to have facilities for people with mental health issues. Because they're not people that, if they do commit a crime, it's based on because of where they are with their mental stability. And so we need to make sure we have a place that's secure for them, but also we need treatment. And so it's gonna cost, you know, something of an investment in dollars. I know that we had military that got shut down, but the General Assembly is now looking at what they need to do for that. I think you're gonna see additional investments for that, because I think now it's becoming aware, you know, I know, but I think everyone in this room knows, there's just really a lot of mental health issues out there. It's not just drug addiction, it's other issues. And so I think the General Assembly's gonna move forward, we need to do more.
And Medicaid needs to pay for it, for children as well, because I worked in pediatrics for years, I'm pioneer. But children who needed mental, health services, we had to send out of state to South Carolina because Medicaid in Georgia would not cover the services for children.
And I agree, and we need to identify it whenever we
And when you're
can.
talking about school safety, mental health is a prime reason why you have the safety issues in schools.
Exactly. Just, and just kind of, it builds on it, it's a downward spiral.
Any more questions? All right, I have a question. I'm from the Board of Elections here, and of course, what we were, I know, but what we were told is that we were gonna have paper ballots. Everybody that's ever worked in the profession like us, that did all of the absentee ballots, we don't want paper ballots, because people don't know how to mark them, and they're very difficult to have. But we understood that next year, we're supposed to be getting paper ballots, but we also understood that the legislatures had not, given any money, toward this. This is another thing where they made a law or decided they're gonna do something, but they've not funded this. Where are you on that? What are you gonna do?
Well, first off, we have a paper ballot, but it's ballot marking device, so it's a machine marked ballot versus hand marked paper ballot. So there's that question. But right now, nothing's been funded, and we're on day 36. So there's not very many days left, and nothing's been funded. So they're gonna push now the next governor, the next secretary of state, the next leadership, and really the General Assembly will make that decision. But I think that's right now, what we are gonna do this year, Governor Kemp has allocated about $7 million for additional audits. So no matter, how the race turns out, just like the last election in 2024, we audited not just the presidential ballot, we actually did it a couple ways. One is all the ballots. So, the absentee ballots, which are in effect hand-marked paper ballots, the early votes, the UOCAVA ballots, and then also election day ballots. All of them we've scanned those, so there's all a record of that, so you have a scan. We partnered with a company that actually then just read all the choices you made of the human readable text, so it had optical scanner, and it's reading optical scan technology, and so it was reading Bob, Mary, Charlie, whatever it was. And so we did that for all 5.2 million ballots. And so we had that 100% count, not just at the presidential race, every single race. So actually then you had the US Senate race, and any other race up and down the line. Then we pulled out the presidential race, even though it wasn't close, that was in the state laws, so that's what we had to do, and we had to pick another statewide race. So we audited those, and you do a sample, and then you really basically, from that, you know that if you race turned out to be like 52%, then you do an audit of a sample size, and if it comes in at 51.9 or 52.1, you say, it was close enough. And then if there's anything that's really, really close, you could well do a 100% hand recount. And the only thing that was ever really that close last year would have been like a county commission seat or maybe a state house seat. Even the state senate seats start, because there's more votes, it just diverges and it's a bigger delta. So this year we'll do the same thing. Governor tends to allocate dollars for that, and then next year they'll finally have a way of looking at it. Continue to do deep dive, because the system we have right now was voted in 2019. It's only going to be 10 years. It's changing the whole space of technology. It's still the best way of going there, but are there faster ways of doing it? What are best practices in other states? I do know that Heritage Foundation ranked us #1 for election integrity in 2021. And Fox News last fall said Georgia and Florida run the best election in the entire country. He was half right, Georgia run the best elections. It's because we have quick results. Thank you. And we also make sure that we keep the lunch shorter than 1 hour, and voters just love that. And so we're going to continue to look at improving the process, but I think we're on day 35 today. I'll check. I keep it on my phone. Someone here must know. So nothing's been done, and time's short. They haven't even finished their budget yet. The fiscal year starts, so there's still job burning on that. I appreciate you volunteering. We got selected, but it takes people like you.
Well,
And do we have any poll workers here?
We've got most of our poll
There
workers,
you go.
poll
God bless
watchers,
you.
all of these ladies have done, most of these ladies have done absentee ballots for us before. And, here in Richmond County, when we leave Election Central after the votes are counted at night, we stay until everybody's counted. And we do an unofficial results. And every one of the board members sign off on that. Then we ask how many of our Unicaba outstanding ballots do we have, because we have a big military policy here, and how many provisional ballots we have. And the results can never change more than those two numbers added up. Because that's the way we do it. That's the way we've done it, and I've been on the board a long time. And we don't have the problems here in our area because we don't leave. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, we're still there.
It didn't have to be last year, did it?
We didn't have to do it. It was so much easier. And, when in 2020, we had 26,000 absentee ballots. And we had a staff that came in, Annette and some of her children, of course, Mary Dixon. Most of our ladies here came in and worked. We had different shifts. You came in and you put your cell phone in an envelope, had no cell phone, no contact. You worked your 8 hours, and then you went home and finished your day. And we didn't have any of the problems that statewide have been shown, not in Richmond County. Because we had Lynn Bailey and we had Travis Scott.
Yeah, you had a great having continuity and then making sure you have eyes on everything. What I will say, when you look at where we are right now, Supreme Court, I just hope that they rule the way I would like them to rule, is they want to, it's a Mississippi case, but all the absentee ballots have to be received by the time the polls close. And I think that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You're just gonna have it playing that way, and I think they'll actually, based on the questions of the judges, I think that we'll finally win on that. The other thing is that they're trying to get federal real ID, and I think that's a good thing, but I wanna let you know, we actually already have it here in Georgia. Because 90%, well actually 99% of all of you are using your driver's license, which is real ID based. And so we're checking citizenship, we're making sure only American citizens are registered, only American citizens vote. Some other states don't do that. In fact, North Dakota, yes, it's a Republican state, they don't even have a voter registration list. It kind of works up here. But I understand that, but I think we just need to have guardrails, and I'd like to have some standards. And sometimes when people don't follow standards, then you have to, try and do that from a federal standpoint. Yes.
I don't see it as much, but I'm surprised on how many mailings there still are on requesting the absentee ballot that's not official.
Oh, you talking about political parties and
Yes.
things like, yes. And what that does is it actually confuses voters, because they make it look like it's official.
Especially
It's-
the elderly.
It's almost like, when you have a corporation, and you have to renew your corporation every January, and all of a sudden you get these notices. And I'm thinking, that's not from the Secretary of State, that's not ours. And then, but for $120, they'll go ahead and re-register your corporation. You can do it for free, plus the fee, but they're charging the fee plus their service. So, yes, they're very clever with free speech, and we've tried to fight it. But I want to let you know that everyone's going to talk about when the race for governor, about this, and this, but I'm actually the only person running for governor that has beaten Stacey Abrams, not just once, multiple times, because she's been suing us so many times. But because we've been able to win in federal court, we can check citizenship through Department of Driver Services. We can make sure we have a clean voter list. And just to let you know, they never give up. We got sued 3 weeks ago by another one of her friendly groups. But we beat her so bad, she moved up to Washington, D.C., so I don't know what she's doing up there. She's got some other hustle. But,
She can stay out of Georgia, we don't.
but she's not here, so it is what it is. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
We upcoming events, and I thought all of you came today and asked these questions because they're very important as to what's happening. As you know, here in Richmond County, they voted not to go up on the millage rate, but if you look at your assessment on the houses, some of them went up. So it's a sneaky way of getting the March the 28th, Columbia County GOP is going to be at their headquarters. Their speaker's going to be Mike Collins, Warren Jones, Burt Jones, and Blake Tillery. April the 8th at 5:30, still Magnolia. April the 16th, 5:30, Faith and Freedom at Pizza Central. April the 22nd, the Richmond County Women's lunches will be here at the end, 11:45. And who is going to be our speaker, do you know? And we're probably going to do a recap on the April the 7th vote too. And then April 25th, Columbia County GOP breakfast. April the 30th, the West Guest Alliance. And don't forget, this is real important. Before you leave, get one of these lists. These are calling lists. We're just going to ask you to be real simple. I'll give you a little dialogue that we're going to put out. You're just going to say, hello, my name is so-and-so. I'm from the Republican Party, and I'm calling to ask you to vote and support Thomas McAdams for House Seat 130. Voting begins Monday, March the 30th, for 4 days at the Municipal Building and Henry Brigham Center. Election date is April the 7th. Please come out and vote, and ask your friends and neighbors to also come and vote. Yes.
May I make a quick announcement for Columbia County?
Sure.
We're gonna be having, scheduled on April 23rd at the Columbia County Republican Party headquarters on Columbia, and it'll be a forum. We have 3 speakers there, and it'll begin at 7 o'clock.
Do you know who the speakers are?
Our commissioners.
Okay. They're the local.
Yes.
They had one, last Saturday from 4 to 5:30, and they had, because Rick Jackson was there in the morning, and, they had the forum that afternoon for the local.
Only 3 people showed up.
I was there that morning, so I helped work that event, but the others, I didn't go back because it was local. But all of those that are wanting to, all of the ladies and gentlemen here, if you're interested in listening to these candidates, please go and support them. It takes a lot to run a campaign. It takes energy, effort, time, friends, family. It takes a lot of support. And the biggest thing it takes is money. And if you at least hear, the only way we beat John Barrow years ago with you ladies in the grassroots. You got out and you pounded the streets. I know some of you ladies, and I'm not gonna say how old we are, but, we were out there walking these streets. I mean, really, we were. In neighborhoods, people would not have believed that we would show up, and we did. And that's how Rick Allen was elected. And it's here with these ladies.
On the 30th, they're gonna have also the candidates come up and do a forum with the West Augusta Alliance,
Right.
local ones.
It's gonna be Richmond County.
Right.
Well, don't forget that, but try to attend any of these meetings that you can. We want to remind you on a couple of other dates. Voting again is, for the 1:30 begins Monday, and then the actual runoff date is the 7th of April. Early voting begins on April 27th. Y'all, we're not far out. We've got to get it going, because May the 19th is gonna be here real quick. And then, of course, the election is May the 19th. The deadline for voter registration is April the 20th, and